Welcome. This is Carolina Trujillo. I'm the Community Relations Director for Essex Media Group, as well as the publisher of La Voz newspaper. And I have today, in our open conversation, 4 members of the police department who are going to talk to us about race and being an African American and being, right now, in this historical moment in time, a police officer. So, welcome. Thank you for accepting our invite. And if you don't mind, please introduce yourselves.
My name's Oren Wright with the Lynn Police Department. I've been a police officer for going on 24 years. I'm currently assigned as the School Security and Emergency Planning Liaison with the Lynn Public Schools.
Hi, my name is Ken Green. I'm a proud product of Lynn. I went to Lynn Public Schools. I'm the chief of the MBTA Transit Police Department. I've been a police officer now for 37 years. Chief of police, 5.5 years.
I'm Officer Joe Pimentel, Swampscott Police Department. I too am a product of Lynn, downtown Lynn, and I went to Lynn English. I've been a police officer now for 2.5 years. I spent 2 years at Transit Police. I'm now been at Swampscott for about 6 months.
I'm Officer Mark Williams, born and raised in Lynn. Been working for Lynn PD for approximately almost 6 years, and proud to be here.
All right. Thank you so much for accepting this invite. And why don't we start with, I'm pretty sure what everybody has on their mind, which is, what does it feel to be a person of color and wearing the uniform right now when there's so much hatred for the institution with the murder of George Floyd?
Well, I mean, if it's okay with everybody, can I start out? With the whole thing with, I just want to speak about the murder of George Floyd and what that did to me. Watching that was very painful to watch. And before anything else, I'm a black man. And, what that murder showed me was that white police officer had no value in the sanctity of a black life. And it really made me angry. And then I became fearful, because George Floyd could have been any one of my 3 sons. And that really enraged me. And I can't believe, after what we've been through, with the murders of, with all the demonstrations, with the murders of Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Laquan McDonald, and that list goes on and on and on and on, that we are still talking about or looking at the murder of an unarmed black man. And it really upsets me. Now, putting on my law enforcement hat, and viewing that murder, I was astonished at the coldness and the callousness that officer showed as that man lay dying underneath his knee. Anybody else want to jump in?
I'll go next. And I think I have to preface it with starting with, as a black man first, it hurt. It hurt because I heard this kind of sums it up for me, that blatant racism never went away. It's just now being filmed. It makes doing this job a struggle, now putting on my police hat. And I know and have worked with several fantastic law enforcement officers from different departments, including my own, that have been white, that I can't imagine them doing anything like that. Something about police officers is we don't agree on a lot of things. And this specific topic about George Floyd, every single police officer that holds life dearly and cares about this job is in full agreement that everything that happened in that moment was beyond wrong.
Thank you, Chief Green, for expressing your opinion, and also Officer Wright for also talking about that. I don't know if you guys, Officer Pimentel.
I'll add a little bit to it, kind of caveat of what Officer Wright said. Was one of the things I took out of it was as far as the department, I I haven't spoken to any officer or seen any form of any officer that hasn't expressed utter dissatisfaction, utter rage for what happened. Exclusive of race, just anyone I spoke to, they were like, this is just bad. This is just evil, period. And they just, I could see it in their eyes and their conversation that they were enraged by it. Like I was enraged by it, and it was just like we just saw it as a bad police act. Whoever saw it. And I think that, to me, shows that, you know, there is a camaraderie amongst us who do believe there's just good and evil, and that was just evil. And we just kind of look at it as a group, as that was complete evil.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree with him. The majority, we have what, about 800,000 police officers in the United States, and the majority of police officers want to do what's right. They want to, you know, treat people with, you know, with respect, civil respect and whatnot. But you know, like any organizations, there's gonna be a few that's gonna make us all look bad. And that's exactly what's happening, but it's been happening a lot.
I was going to point to that. I was
No.
saying, you know, the frequency, I think
Yeah.
it's not helping, it's exacerbating the
It's
situation.
not. It is a problem, and that's why we're having these mass demonstrations, you know, around the country, around the world, because people are sick and tired of being sick and tired of unarmed black men, unarmed black women, and sometimes unarmed black children being murdered at the hands of police officers. The same people that wear the uniforms that we wear, that took the same oath of office and the same oath of honor and the, you know, like vows, you know, that are committing these atrocities. And it's got to stop. People are demanding change, and change is coming. It's coming.
This isn't quieting down, and it shouldn't. You know, the other piece of this is there's so much outrage in all walks of life regarding the situation and the ongoing situation with the blatant, violent racism. And it's tough being a police officer in the sense where we're, as a whole, being looked at as being wrong. And there's these different, you know, they're calling for different things to happen to police forces. And I'll say this about the city of Lynn, I have to say this about the city of Lynn, that myself, and I think I can speak for our department, we're beyond proud for how the citizens have conducted themselves with protests. Mark Anthony stood next to me on the front steps of our department a few weeks ago on the first major protest in Lynn. And we're feeling the same pain that the people are feeling, because I've gone through blatant racism. I mean, I'm the second oldest here, so I know that you have, to some extent, have had some of
We've all
that.
been through
And I know
racism.
you have,
We've all been
being a
through
bit older, and it all comes back. It all comes back, and you never forget it.
Can we talk about that for a little bit right now? Apparently, all of you have been through episodes of racism. Can you expand on that?
I can mention a couple things. I myself am not a black man. I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican. My mother's Puerto Rican, my father's Dominican. But I have experienced racism in my life at a young age in the city of Lynn. And I think that being from Lynn, we're truly blessed about how diverse it is. And being from a low-income community, coming from downtown Lynn, I could see different things that others may not have the chance to see in different cities and towns. And what I think we need to do is that, thank you, Chief. What I think we need to do is find a level of understanding between people. And being from downtown Lynn, I was able to see friends of mine who they faced different things that others didn't, and they were put in different situations and were more vulnerable to enter the life of delinquency and criminal activity. But those same friends of mine were good kids. They still are good kids. I'm only 25 years old. I still see them out on the streets. And I have that mindset. Whenever I interact with them, I don't look at them as a criminal. I look at them as my friend who's still my friend. And they treat me with the same respect. Even with all this going on, I still have that relationship. So that being said, I think that when first, as police officers, we need to understand where certain individuals are coming from. Maybe they had different circumstances growing up. They weren't as fortunate as yourself, or depending different backgrounds. So I think us wearing the badge and being armed and being in an authoritative role, we have to understand first. But then at the same time, once we do that and solidify that, I think that the public needs to understand as well. Police officers take off this badge, go home, have families, deal with problems just like anybody else, and once that level of understanding is met and changes are made, I think we can move on and make progress.
I think you just made a great point. You know, we're all from Lynn. I grew up in America Park Projects, which is now Kings Lynn. It was a dilapidated project I grew up in. A lot of things, I mean, if you came from the projects, you know what that entails. So I don't really have to go in it, but there was a lot of people I grew up with that, you know, who aren't as fortunate, not as blessed as I am right now, to have chosen the path that I've chosen. But still my friends.
Yeah.
You know, they're still good people.
All walks of
You know,
life.
they've just taken a different path as I have taken. But, and they're amazed that I still treat them as my friends. You know, because they think I'm over here, up here, but no, I'm still Ken Green from America Park.
Yeah.
So I treat everybody as they treat me. You know, now as far as, I don't want to hijack the conversation, but as far as racism, I've been through it too as a kid. Back in when I was 13 years old, I mean, I saw racism. You know, I remember going to the MBTA arena over here on the Linway, ice skating. Me, one of my best friends, and a cousin. We're 13 years old. It's freezing outside. We got our skates in our hand, and everybody's trying. It's packed. We're trying to get inside the ice skating arena, you know, so we can get warm, you know, before they open up. And a white police officer pointed us out and said, "You guys gotta wait outside." Why we gotta wait outside? You know, we're mumbling this to ourselves. Why do we go? We got all these white people here. How come they don't ask them to go out? So my cousin, being the way she is, you know, she's, you know, she'll let people know. Well, why are we gonna go out there? How come you don't get these white kids out there? Why are we gonna go out there? It's freezing out there. He took her by the neck, slammed her up against the wall, slammed her on the ground, right? Put handcuffs on her, brought her in the back room there, where you could hear her screaming, right? And placed her under arrest. Now she's 13 years old, 5 foot nothing. 13, this is a grown man. We went to court and nothing happened. And I'll give you another, same type of scenario. A year later, I went to Bree Junior High School over here on, is it Boston Street? Or was it Western Ave?
O'Callaghan Way.
O'Callaghan
Way.
No, that's,
The one you
you
went to.
guys are old. I'm
one you
talking
went to.
about young. I mean, young, you guys are young.
The
I'm
one you went
sorry.
to is now Druids on Hood Street.
Right, but the main, so anyway, there's a Dunkin' Donuts right there. Is that Western Ave? That's Western Ave,
That's
right?
what's.
Right next door was Bree Junior High School then. And one of the big things to do in the morning is to get in the Dunkin' Donuts, get a couple of donuts and get some hot chocolate. It was cold. Packed in there. Again, there was a Lynn cop. And told all the black kids, you gotta go outside and wait. I ain't making this up. I was there. I was making. So one of the guys in the group said something. And he's 13 years old. I'm 14. He was 13. Grabbed him, slammed him up against the wall, and slammed him on the ground, handcuffed him because he had the gall. Right? He had the gall to speak up. And locked him up. Now those are grown men treating little boys, black boys, as if they're criminals. You know, that happened. Now, being the chief of police, I'm not immune to racial biases and whatnot.
I was gonna ask you just that.
No, I'm not immune.
I'm glad you
I'm not going to name the town, but I was down the Cape, a pretty popular place. I was in my shorts and my flip-flops or whatever, and I had to use the bathroom. You know, I could have walked further and used the bathroom, but there was a police station there. I've been a cop for 36 years. I'm comfortable around police, you know, so I walked in there and showed them my credentials, and they just looked at me and said, this is a secure facility, no, you can't use that bathroom. I said, what? I said, if you came to Boston and you wanted to use, you showed me the right credentials, absolutely you can come in there. Sorry, no, well, let me speak to the chief. Well, he's not here. Well, let me speak to your commanding officer. He's out on the road. You know, all these impediments, all these impediments. I'm like, Okay, but I walked out of there, they made me feel that, well, reminded me, before any titles, before any position that I held, you're a black man, and what we see is black, threat. Can't trust you. Now, me and the chief talked about the next morning, you know, he gave me the, you know, the usual lip service, but I know how I felt. I know how I felt. And I can go on and on and on, but I'll let somebody else speak.
I've had several instances. I moved from Lynn going into the 3rd grade to Peabody. So going into a classroom where I was the only black kid, you got different things happening to you from kids, from parents. You know, you get a little bit older in elementary school and you want to maybe, or rather middle school, and you want to date a white girl, and you know there's something that when you meet someone, that the first thing they see is the color of your skin. I'm not gonna bore you with all the many indignities that I dealt with there, but it was refreshing to come back to Lynn on the weekends because of the diversity. And granted, things did change by the time I was getting ready to go into high school, but it was a tough road initially. And flash forward to being a police officer, in my first 8-9 months of being a police officer, and when you're working with a partner, half the time you're driving, the other half the time you're taking all the reports. And I remember knocking on a door of someone who had called the police, the person opening the door, and I'm the first person standing there, and them walking right past me, and almost shoulder to shoulder to me to speak to my white partner who was next to me. And God bless him, he said, "Excuse me, that officer's talking to you." In that moment, that very moment, I didn't think that something had changed miraculously because I became a police officer. I wore this uniform, but that told me a lot. That there's still people out there, and this person wasn't much older than me, which was the tough thing. Another tough thing.
I was a supervisor, and that happened to me. You know, I mean, you got people coming up asking questions and whatnot, and they're talking to the white officer. They're not acknowledge you, and I'm the supervisor. And you see the white officers, they're kind of, well, you might want to talk to him first. You know, that's my supervisor. You know what I mean? So it happens.
And I think that this conversation, we can stop now, and we're gonna address the second part of this conversation. And I'm glad that you guys are being very open about your own experiences within your role as a police officer, facing racism among your own peers, and we can expand a little bit on that on our next segment. Okay, so we're going to continue our conversation about race and, having the job of being a police officer. And I just want to pick up on that last part of our last conversation, which was, you've already expressed that you have faced racism within your own department, which is supposed to be a family. The police department is supposed to be your family, your job, your job. So can we talk a little bit more about what that feels like?
Can I just clarify just one thing?
Sure.
Real quick? Sorry, Chief.
It's okay.
For me specifically, I want to make sure it's clear. I have not witnessed racism towards me or towards anyone within my department.
Okay.
I hope you haven't, Mark, but because I don't know about it if you do, but I know I haven't specifically. I'd be heartbroken if someone that I've worked with over the last almost 24 years was like that and I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Not just for the fact that I didn't know about it, but I'd be shocked, and I would act accordingly. But I personally have not. And stereotypes we were talking about off camera.
Mm-hmm.
I had an officer when I first started,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working in the signal, which is dispatch, on overtime on a night shift. And this man, over those 6 or so months, would not talk to me. Had nothing really to say to me. And he's an older man. He retired a short time later. And I'm thinking to myself, what? And then I went back to, it's because I'm black. So I'm sitting there in the signal room working with him and another couple people, and someone talks to me about college basketball. He turns, and I gave an answer, and that person turned to me, who I thought possibly was racist, and was like, "Kid, you like college basketball?" And became my best buddy. He didn't stereotype me as a black man liking basketball. He didn't. He was doing the rookie hazing.
Oh,
He wanted nothing to do with the rookie other than to tell me what to do, and it was nothing personal. And God rest his soul, he passed away a few years ago, and I still write on his Facebook Paul, happy birthday in heaven. Rest in peace.
So Officer Wright, you never experienced racism
Not
within your
within my
career?
department.
Okay.
Working in plain clothes and working with another, we'll say another agency, when myself and my partners were walking out and we were going to use a informant to do a job with us, and a person, it was all white officers, myself and the informant, who was actually Dominican, and one of the other agency people came to me, put his arm around me, and started giving me the play-by-play of what they wanted me to do, and then I pulled my badge out, and I said, "Really?" And needless to say, they stumbled over themselves for a bit. And we went about our business, but I never forgot that. And my supervisor then, to say that he corrected that person would be an understatement.
I'm glad. I'm glad that happened.
I have a comment to make. Actually, prior to working at Swampscott, like I said, I worked for transit police. I had an incident at North Station one day. It was racism. I don't know if you want to call it racism, but it was with a Puerto Rican male, and he saw that I was Hispanic, and I saw him conducting what I thought was drug business, and I just stopped him to talk to him, and he became irate, and he was calling me a traitor, being that he knew that I was Puerto Rican, and he felt angry that I was stopping him, and the fact that I was Puerto Rican and I was a police officer, and that shows it's amongst your own, it's stereotyping, you know, and it happens amongst your own ethnicities as well. So that just shows that this is just a generation, like generations after generations, that this is ingrained in individuals' heads, that, you know, police officers may have a bad encounter with police officers, and that just goes from generation to generation. Now they see a Spanish police officer and they can't believe I'm a police officer, and it's a tough situation, you know.
I can't
If I
imagine.
could cut caveat to that, because that's right along what I was going to jump into. So yeah, I've been on about 6 years, and that was one of the big shockers for me. I sort of kind of expected it because, you know, it's police, and you just think, you know, just because you're a black man, you're an officer, you're still going to get some blowback because you're an officer. But one of the biggest things I noticed, I can't really even count how many times. I remember a specific time. We arrested this gentleman, and we brought him into booking, and I'm trying to speak to him, and he became irate for no particular reason. He was like, "I don't want to speak to you, I want to speak to that officer." And he specifically said that white officer. And he said, because, and it was like, he was drunk and everything, but he was like articulating what he was saying. He was like, because you guys get worse when you become an officer and you're against us. And I was like, he was in this long diatribe, and I was just like, wow. And there's been several instances I can think of. And most of the times, you know, when slurs were thrown out, ironically, it was kind of my own race, and they were just kind of like you were saying, like, you're a traitor, and things like that. And some of the worst things I heard, and again, the protests were good. No one got injured, and we consider that a victory all the way through. But some of the things I did notice was a lot of the words thrown around was a traitor to your race,
Uncle Tom.
you gotta throw that out there, Uncle Tom, you know, a couple of other slurs, and it's unfortunate because in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, you know, I've been personally blessed, you know, my dad in my life, kind of, he told me stories of what he went through, and he was saying, you know, I don't want you to go through this, and he kind of steered me on the right path. But it's kind of unfortunate because I kind of was thinking, you know, well, I haven't experienced what my dad before me experienced per se, or my mom before me, but what I can do is kind of reverse the trend and be part of this, be part of, you know, be a Lynn police officer and kind of just reach out a little bit, and then like I get some of this blowback, and I was kind of like blown away by it. Not everybody, absolutely not everybody, but I did notice it happen more times than often, and that was kind of a shocker.
I'm glad you point that out because as you're saying, there are two forms of doing this. So the first part is within your organization trying to right the wrongs that maybe have committed, like you said, a lot of people have all these stories that are negative stories with police officers, and right now they're just portraying these horrible experiences into any officer that comes in. So there's some work that needs to happen within the organization, and we can talk a little bit about that. And the other part is within the community, how do we repair those bonds? And how do we start building trust? Like you said, my father has told me, you need to do right. You need to do right within your authority. You need to do the right thing. So that's a two-way question.
I
So
want to
within,
back up for a minute.
absolutely.
You know, because I think your question was, have you experienced racism within your department?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, I didn't get a chance to answer that.
Go right ahead.
So if I
Chief.
can,
Absolutely,
I'd
Chief, you
appreciate it. Listen, there's institutional racism. There's racism in every institution, every large institution, whether it's education, housing, healthcare, and yes, it's in law enforcement. And yes, there are people on my department, or there have been people on my department that harbors racial biases. They just do. I've lived it. I'm living it now. I'm being sued right now in federal court by 3 middle-aged white guys who I had to discipline, terminate. And, the funny thing about it is how easily, that they can bring these lawsuits on. I terminate them. They go through arbitration. Arbitration confirms that I was right. They hold those firings up. But okay, let's try to get them federally. Okay, so what? One of the things, I mean, and you would think that they were cutting and pasting their same complaints. He doesn't like white people. He's anti-veteran. Never mind that I was putting in overtime when I wasn't entitled to it. I was stealing money and time multiple times. Never mind that I was AWOL multiple times, hours. Never mind that I was covering up a civil rights violation and submitting false reports. Don't look at what I did. Look at him. That's a black man. Look what he's doing to me. He doesn't like white people. He doesn't like, it's crazy. And what's even more crazy is that the courts are letting this go through. And another thing I want to hit on. You don't really see the racial biases and the racism until you become a threat. You're a police officer. White, they can't do anything to you. You're one of them now. But when you start climbing, you start taking exams, you start becoming a supervisor, lieutenant, deputy, on the command staff, chief, your competition, and that's when you really see it. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's black. He only got the position because he's black. I should have gotten this position, even though nowhere near as qualified as I've been. And I'm telling you, I've lived through this. I'm living through it now. I mean, to the point where one guy, who I became the interim chief, and there was a guy that on the command staff, and he was undermining me. He's stupid. He's only a community guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. I should get that interim job. Blah blah. To the point where I just got so pissed off that I put him back down to civil service rank. And where's that guy at now? He's a lieutenant working a midnight shift. So I had to get rid of him and get him off my command staff. But those are some of the things I got to go through. But again, you have to have thick skin, big shoulders. You have to drown out the noise, right, and do your job. Now, as chief, and I'm bragging about this, but it's because of the patrol plan we put together as a command staff and the hard work of the men and women of the transit police, we got crime down to historic lows. Historic, that the MBTA has never seen since they've been recording crime. Not for 1 year, not for 2 years, not for 3 years, not for 4 years, but for 5 years straight. That's, and that's the job that we've been doing. You know what I mean? So, anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
No, I think that, and thank you so much for getting that question back on track.
Right.
Going to my original question, from the department perspective, how do you feel that this can be resolved in a way that it ends?
What ends?
racism.
I don't know that we're gonna see that in our lifetime. Matter of fact, we're not. And I'm not okay with that, but those voices, that noise, the chief has said a few different times, we need, it's been understood for a bit, for some years now, that it wasn't going to be tolerated, but there's always some underlying, there's always someone that still has these thoughts, has still these ways about them. As far as getting through this current situation, I almost don't have words for it all, what's happening right now. Some people are using words like revolution,
Defund the police.
defund the police, and all these other things, but I can speak for the city of Lynn, I can speak for me personally, what I've been involved with, and we have to continue with how we reach out, with being transparent, with being, we work with the clergy, we work with the kids. This summer, except for COVID happened, would have been my 22nd year in the Essex Summer Day program, where we run a free camp with 10 other communities, and we all meet in one specific place, and we do field trips, and we're sneaking in some learning at the same time, anti-drug, anti-gang. And you know, there's so much that can be done. There are a lot, almost every department's doing something, or has been doing something, and that's why I think the protests went the way they did. Yes, like Officer Williams said, there was a lot of nasty things being said, but with amongst the 400 to 500 people that were standing in front of us at the police station, 20, maybe 30, and they stick out because they were saying the opposite of what was being said by the masses, and even with the anger in the crowd, it was not about violence. It was about sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Accountability.
Accountability. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? Because this doesn't end with just black voices. We need every voice, and the majority is still white in the country. And if everyone truly believes that all lives matter, that black lives matter, that white lives matter, that blue lives matter, that what you pick a color, that all lives matter, then everyone needs to speak up, and we can't just be protested every week. What are we going to do? I'm not going to get into the specifics of what my department's looking into and what I personally want to try to make happen, but we're looking to make some things happen along with what we already do, because what I started to go on was what we saw with the people. No violence occurred. That the people demanded it to be peaceful.
Right.
Amongst, even with the voices, even with the bad noise that was happening in the mix, the people demanded it be peaceful.
Before I go to you, Chief, I know that Officer Pimentel wanted to speak about what can be done.
I just want to make 2 quick points here. As I said earlier, to make a progression in this, we have to make encounters, we have to change the mindset of individuals, and like you said, you're not going to be able to change it. Just like crime, there's always going to be crime, but if you have officers on the street, we can maybe deter some. So with having encounters and changing the mindset, with officers engaging with black individuals and black citizens, and officers of color engaging with white, and changing that mindset, I think we could make progression, as well as I think with the hiring process. I think if you get in depth, you could weed out those who may have these biases within departments, not just having individuals who have a GED or diploma, maybe looking into more of an investigation, and right now you could just put down a couple of references, maybe speaking to guidance counselors, teachers, finding out who this recruit officer is truly, and I think by doing that and finding that, you could weed out certain officers who are being hired with certain biases.
Thank you so much. Chief, you have the closing comment.
Well, I
Go right
appreciate
ahead.
that. Listen, I'm a little bit older than everybody here, right? Correct? A little bit more experienced. Discussions on racism have been going on for years, way before my time, and nothing changes. Now, with all these demonstrations and these protesters and the demographics of the protesters, white, black, Latino, Asian, all from all walks of life, they're demanding change. Change has to happen. You know, this is not gonna go away. It has to happen. Now, how do we change within the police department? We change policy. You know, MBTA Transit Police Department made two great changes in the use of force policy. We added language in valuable language that says that the use of chokeholds, strangleholds, neck restraints is prohibited. That's in our policy. Another thing that we added in there, and this is big time, big time for law enforcement officers, because we usually take care of one another, right? All officers that witness another officer use excessive force, regardless of rank, has a duty and that obligation to intervene and to report that excessive force immediately. And if I could just say one more thing, we have to hold, because we're talking about unarmed black people being murdered.
Yep.
We have to hold officers accountable for their actions, not just charged when we see this gross misconduct. Not just charged, but being put in jail. But being put in, not jail, prison for a long period of time. And when other people see that, hopefully that'll help them from doing the same thing, going down the same road.
I agree 100% with you. And I just want to take the time to thank you for having this open discussion and sharing with us your history within the department. We really appreciate, all the readers really appreciate hearing from your voices, hearing about your experiences, because I think it, like you said, you know, we're black men and we are going through these motions as every other black person in this country is. And I think that's
We're wearing
so,
two hats.
that's so,
Right.
so powerful. And again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.